And welcome back. We are going to go ahead and look at doing some Boolean expression evaluation. And to get us started here, we have a very simple program to start. Now notice it's not complete. We're going to have to do some stuff with it, but it is very simple in what we're doing. We're getting input for a word followed by a number. And then you can see we also have some predefined values here. So while num1 is getting from the keyboard and input is getting from the keyboard, we have this variable num2, which is set to 15, and word, which is set to computer with a capital C. And then we also have this Boolean variable here that says is a computer. So it's asking pretty much, is it a computer? And so we can actually use that to test something to see if it's a computer. So for example, if I want to see that word is a computer, I don't necessarily have to, create something in this if statement. So I could, of course, do like if word dot equals computer. I could do that in here, or I could also set it here. So this is one thing that you have to keep in mind. When you do Booleans, you can go ahead and check them before you even get to the if statement. So we can go ahead and check to see if this is a value that we want to use. So for example, right now we say if it equals the word computer, that means that this would be true. If it doesn't equal the word computer, and notice it's a lowercase c, that means this is going to come back false. Now if we look at our value for a word starts with a uppercase C, and so this would technically come back as false. Now if we wanted this to ignore casing, we could easily just come here and change this to ignore case. And now it should be the same thing. So we have the word computer with a lowercase c and the word computer with an uppercase C. Doesn't matter because again we're ignoring case here, so this would now evaluate to true. And what that means is that when we look at that with our if statement here, we said if is a computer. So this means if this condition is true, we're going to print it out. Now how would we do this if we didn't want to do a Boolean? Well, it would be the exact same thing as what we would have here if word dot equals ignore case computer. And that would simply just replace this Boolean. So these two expressions right here, this if statement and this if statement, are identical. So these two things do the exact same thing. But again, this is a Boolean expression stored in a Boolean variable, whereas this is a Boolean expression that we put directly into the if statement. And both of these are valid approaches. However, most of the time, unless you're going to be controlling this Boolean and you calling it explicitly, we might just go ahead and just code this right in here. But again, you of course could use a Boolean, and that's perfectly fine. Next, let's go ahead and look at our other if statement here. Now, notice we have if num1 is less than num2, and this of course is going to test two numeric types. And of course, we look at num1 is just going to be given from the user, num2 will be 15. And we're going to say the first number is smaller. Now this is a pretty easy expression that we can evaluate. So for example, if I type 5, we know it's going to be true. If I type, let's say 20, well, we know it'd be false and we won't get any input. But what if we wanted to do a compound expression? So for example, we want to see if a number is, let's say, smaller and maybe if it's odd. So for example, let's just go ahead and add a quick print line statement here just to verify that to the user. And just saying testing to see if the first number is smaller and is odd. And then all we need to do is we can come in here and we could, of course, add more if statements and stuff like that. But we would say the first number is smaller. And because we're testing a second condition, and notice we say and is odd, that means we want to use the and symbol here. And then we can say num1. And we can use the modulus operator because that means find the remainder. And I can just put 1 in here. So if num1 modulus 1. Now notice it's giving an error here, right? Because it doesn't know what to do with this. And that's because, remember, mod 1 is an arithmetic value. It's not a Boolean value that I can test. So what I really want to do is put this in parentheses here and say num1 mod 1. Now it's not going to be a mod 1, it's going to be mod 2 because we want to get a remainder. And we're going to say if that equals the value of 1 because we want to see we get a remainder of 1. So if num1 modulus 2, all right, so that means we're going to look to see if it's divisible by 2. And we're going to see if that remainder is equal to 1. That should, of course, give us an odd number because if it gave us a remainder of 0, then that we would have an even number. So we can go ahead and just add another print line statement to match our change code here. So now if this is true, we should get the first number is smaller, the first number is odd. And we could very easily add an else if statement in here that could mirror this. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. And let's just go ahead and have the exact same print line statements. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring those down. But maybe I want to do now one where this, instead of being an and, I can change this to an or. So the first number is smaller, and I can just add a little caveat here and just say or the first number is odd. And now I'm just going to change this to a print here. All right, so the first number is smaller or the first number is odd. So now if we run this, all right, so let's enter a word followed by a number. So let's just go ahead. I'm just going to put computer lowercase. Let's put a number. Let's just put 5. All right, we got it is a computer twice because remember we did have the same identical Boolean test. Then we are testing to see if the first number is smaller and is odd. And so we got the first number is smaller, the first number is odd. Very good. So what if we test this with, let's say, a different number? So let's just put in 6. Now you can see we get the same outputs again, except we get the first number is smaller or the first number is odd. So that is a very important distinction. Actually, I'm going to clean this code up just a little bit here, just so it matches. And again, I could use this so that way it's all a print or print line, but I'm just going to put this in one print statement here. And what's if we did a larger number though? Because we haven't done a case for a larger number. So I'm just going to put in a word and let's do 20. All right. Now you notice it says testing the first number is smaller and the first number is odd. Notice we have no output there. So we would, of course, could easily fix that by just putting an else statement, and we could easily add just this system.out.println and say the first number is larger. All right. And that's maybe all we want to have that line of code do. All right. But that's a quick, easy way for us to evaluate a compound Boolean expression. Now, what's if I wanted to take this big thing here and I wanted to instead store this with a Boolean? I could do the same thing as how I did this with my string up here. So I could have another Boolean and just have this call, let's say, number eval is larger and positive. Okay, so that's telling me that I'm looking for a larger number and it's going to be positive. Now, look, we don't have one that's larger and positive. We have smaller and we have positive. Oh, and this needs to be 0. There we go. Quick fix there. All right. If we want this to be even, so we want to, let's change this to be even. There we go. So we're taking this an even number here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this code. I was getting a little ahead of myself mentally here. And what I can do is I can actually, I could add this whole line of code in here. I could easily come and do this and just change, well, I'm going to make this, it's going to be larger, which we could just switch this to this, and we can make this going to be even, which means this becomes 0. I could do that, or I could replace this expression here, come up here to my Boolean, hit equals, and I could have it be equal to this value here, and then I could replace this else if with this Boolean value. Again, this is just a way to show you that you can use Booleans because you're evaluating Boolean expressions. Both of those, of course, are identical. All right, so this way that we did here is identical to if we had this in the else if. Again, both ways are perfectly valid. Both ways are ways we can use this. And if I were to run my code, and let's just go ahead and put in 20 now. All right, we get the first number is small or the first number is odd. Oh, it's because we didn't change this code here. We may want to update that just so we have a proper output. And let's do 20 again. All right, now we get the first number is larger or the first number is even. Perfect. So now, of course, we have a much better approach here. But notice we do say and in our Boolean, so we might have to adjust this so this is a and expression. And that would, of course, adjusting it here allows us to adjust it very easily here. We don't have to come and change anything here other than maybe just the output line. So one thing I do want to point out is the advantage of doing a Boolean expression this way versus coding it into your expression like this is just like if we have a normal variable, if I want to use this expression multiple times in my program, and this is a pretty simple example, but we had something we're going to be testing multiple times, using a Boolean might actually come in handy because then we don't have to go through and recode it every time. But again, this is just something to kind of keep in mind as you start working with if-else statements and as you start making your programs more and more complex and test for various different conditions.